Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with more college football news. Now, recently, Ryan Williams of the Alabama Crimson Tide, the wide receiver, the freshman phenomenon that we all knew, there's been talk about him possibly entering the transfer portal and also, of course, going to another school, which we'll discuss here in a little bit because reporters asked him recently uh, was he going to leave the school and enter the transfer portal? And he stated that he wasn't. And he sounded, to me, he sounded kind of Will See-ish, but his answers were a definite no, he's not leaving, he's staying. But he's looked very disinterested and disengaged this year, especially after the last year that he had. Now, his last year wasn't the most phenomenal season we've seen from a freshman receiver class or freshman receiver. But he made phenomenal plays. He's made some huge plays, and this year we haven't seen much of that. But the question that most are asking is, should he enter this transfer for portal? And some people are bringing up the situation when he first got to Alabama. So when he was recruited by Nick Saban told him he's not going to leave Alabama at least for 3 years, and he'll be there for majority of his career. Assuming that Ryan Williams would only be there 3 years because he's eligible to go to the NFL after those 3 years. So basically, he was saying that Saban promised him he would be there for his tenure at Alabama. Turns out Nick Saban never even started one season with him because he retired before he even started his first season his freshman year. So he never got the coaching from Nick Saban and, had to work under Kalen DeBoer. Now, Ron Williams did decommit once he knew that Nick Saban was not going to be his coach, but he quickly committed it, and then he did his freshman year and he did his sophomore year this year, and they're in the playoffs right now, and they have to play the number one Indiana here tomorrow, and we'll see what happens after that, and if that changes anything with the Ryan Williams situation. But to his credit, he did follow through with his commitment, unlike Nick Saban and what he did. Um, but with the play that he's had, the underwhelming year, it just caused more speculation to lead people to believe that he could possibly be out after this year. So, and just a side note, I was thinking about this earlier. The debate with Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith is not in particular, it's not particularly close because a lot of people was comparing them because, they had the cover of college EA Sports college football game together, and they had you know, this debate going on between Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith, and that debate is not even close in my opinion. No disrespect to Ryan Williams, but Jeremiah Smith seems to be on a whole nother level. He seems to be more mature as a player. He seems like he's more of a go get it type of guy. He doesn't need much motivation. He seems like one of those guys that, brings his lunch pail and gets the work done. And he's just more physical and he's more established as a route runner. He just seems like he's more above his years than Ryan Williams is. Ryan Williams is actually, he's a younger guy as well as Jeremiah Smith, but it just seems like they're on two different levels. They grew up two different ways. Jeremiah Smith appears to be more a seasoned veteran than a Ryan Williams is. So that debate is not even close because Jeremiah Smith's motor is just on a whole nother level from Ryan Williams. And I was thinking about it earlier and the difference between these two guys in comparison to NFL players. And when I thought about Jeremiah Smith, I would think about like those guys like a Larry Fitzgerald or even like a Julio Jones. But when I think about Ryan Williams, especially this year, I think of more of a and it and it's just comparative to not comparative to like styles, but just to their attitudes. I think of Ryan Williams more of a George Pickens because George Pickens, he comes and he goes. He's very talented. He can run routes. He, can give you a 150 to 200 yard game when he wants to. But the key word is when he wants to, and it doesn't seem like that's his motive every game. So if he's not getting the pass or the play's not called for him, he's not really motivated. And you could tell by the way George Pickens gets off the football. When he gets off the football, he's not. You can tell he's not getting the football, or it's not called for him because he's half speeding it. But you can tell when he's getting the football because he's jumping off the football. He looks very motivated. He's trying to get open fast so he can get that catch, or he can try to score a touchdown. Uh, but players like Julio Jones and players like a Terrell Owens, you see every play they're motivated every play regardless if they're getting the football or not. So it's a huge difference, especially with trying to get drafted in college, because those scouts, they nitpick every little thing. So they're judging off your motor mostly more than even your skill set, or your stats and accolades. Because a lot every year you see some player get drafted high that we don't particularly is the best player, especially with defensive linemen and things like that. They're looking at your motor. If you're getting double teamed, how hard are you trying to still get the quarterback, or you have speed in it? A lot of those things they really consider when they're trying to get drafted. So I think the best advice for Ryan Williams is for him to actually show that he looks motivated. Yeah, even if he doesn't want to be in Alabama, but your situation is bigger than the program and bigger than a school. So, other schools are looking at your motivation and your talent as well. So you definitely want to put on your best performance at all times, regardless of what the situation that you're in. And it doesn't appear that he really cares about being at Alabama and people can see that, you don't have to say it. You can show it in your play. Cause he doesn't look motivated. He's only has about 600 yards receiving this year. Um, in 10 plus games, which is kind of crazy, especially from what he had. And most people will say, well, he hasn't had the most elite quarterbacks, which Jeremiah Smith hasn't had the most elite quarterbacks either. He's had Julian Sayin and Will Howard. Some people can argue that Ryan Williams had better quarterbacks, with Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson this year. He's had definitely more quarterbacks that were more mobile, I should say. But definitely, yeah, he has to do better. But if Ron Williams leaves, what are his options? Because he'll have a lot of options to go different places. And I think one of the biggest places he can go is probably LSU, which is considered wide receiver university, because of all of the plethora of wide receivers they were able to put into the NFL. And they usually have very good quarterback, good to very good quarterback play, and they can attract good quarterbacks. For some reason, Alabama just doesn't attract good quarterbacks, with the exception of Tua Tagovailoa, and maybe they had Jalen Hurts for about a year, but he was never a true pocket passer, and still is not really in the NFL. So for some reason, they never attract great quarterbacks. Now LSU has been able to do that, with Joe Burrow, of course, and then they even had um, the guy that went to Alabama. They had a couple of Heisman candidate hopefuls in there, so they've been able to track quarterbacks. But for some reason, Alabama doesn't. But I think if he goes to LSU, he'll fit in well with those receivers. He'll have a decent quarterback, and he'll be less, targeted or double teamed in that system. It'll be very difficult to guard him. Now, another way is he can go to USC and team up with Jeremiah Smith, which he can get some toolage from him, or learn some, motor, be able to be motivated from his motor and stuff like that. But most people see that as a cop out. But that is one of the great options, and they're able to attract better quarterbacks as well and better running backs. And so he'll be less double teamed, definitely in that system. Um, USC is another one. They produce a lot of great receivers out of that university, and usually can attract great quarterbacks. They have a great coach as well. Texas is another one. So he has a lot of options that if he wants to transfer, he can go to. But I think for his brand, I think it's better to stay at Alabama because there's not a lot of loyalty in college sports, especially with the NIL and the transfer portal. There's not a lot of loyalty, and for him to stay at Alabama all 3 years or 4 years or whatever he does in college will look a lot different, especially if he can put up numbers in that system and be able to say, I was the number one receiver with not really, great running backs because they haven't had legendary running backs in a couple of years since I believe Gibbs left. But these last couple of years, they haven't had elite running backs. So he can say, hey, I was the number one receiver, getting a lot of double teams, getting these stats, and it'll look different for his draft prospect. But if you go to like LSU, you're, dime a dozen essentially, or if you go to Ohio State, you might not be the number one. It's going to be Jeremiah Smith. Um, or if you go to Texas, there's going to be other talent there because they attract great quarterbacks as well. They have Arch Manning there. Then they're going to have a plethora of receivers and running backs, and you're going to get lost in the shuffle. So I think Alabama is the best way for him to go because he will be the number one top dog. And if he can accumulate stats in that system, it'll show these NFL scouts that, hey, I've been in a system where I've been in one-on-one focus. I'm getting double teams, triple teams, and I've still been able to produce. So I think that'll help him as well. But, if DeBoer is not there next year, what kind of coach could they bring in? Because if they bring in a defensive coach, he might be less inclined, even though Saban was a defensive coach, to stay. But if they bring in an offensive mastermind, like one of these NFL guys that fell down, he might be able to be better suited next year at Alabama. But we'll see what happens with this, especially after Alabama is scheduled to play the number one ranked team in the country, Indiana, tomorrow. So we'll see what happens with that. And if, you know, the game goes bad, we might have different results from the Ryan Williams situation, but we'll definitely keep an eye on it. And until next time, I'll see you next time.